Welcome back to another exciting, riveting episode of Coffee Convos. I am your host, John Voelz, and with me today is Sarah Aquino. Give her a big round of applause.
Thanks for having me, John.
Hey, Sarah, you've been on this program before.
I have, and yes, thank you very much. This is an incredible public service you are performing for our residents, and you were gracious enough to do it again. So there's not a lot of time. We had a candidate forum last week, and there's not a lot of time to get much information out in 1 minute, which is what they gave us for, to answer questions. And so this is an opportunity to just kind of have some good Q&A and let people see who the candidates are.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, Sarah currently sits on City Council, if you were not aware, and she is running for City Council. So,
Yeah.
This is the first time that we've done these district elections. So tell us a little bit about your district, if somebody is.
Yeah. So I'm running in what's called the 3rd district, which includes all of Empire Ranch, where I live, all of south of 50, kind of the area. Broadstone, but we have 2 Broadstones in Folsom. I don't know really why it was set up that way, but the Broadstone that is east of East Bidwell, so kind of adjacent to where I am in Empire Ranch, and then a tiny sliver of Lexington Hills. It's the area that I think is, now I'm directionally challenged, John, but people tell me it's like south or east or southeast or something. Basically, if you were driving down Silverhorn from Scholar Way toward Golf Links Drive, it'd be right of Silverhorn, so kind of more up in the hills, like Chambersburg Way and that sort of stuff.
All right, good. Now you have served on City Council in various capacities over the years and done a lot of things in our community. Why don't you catch everyone up to speed? Give us a little bit of your elevator pitch, why you're running again, what you hope to bring to the table.
Yeah, so thank you. When I ran 4 years ago, I promised to do 4 things, and that was to be accessible, to listen, to do my homework, and to make common sense decisions. And I think I've done that and more. I've worked really hard to be a hands-on council member, somebody who is responsive to residents, and somebody who's willing to roll my sleeves up and lead by example. And we, obviously Folsom is a great place to live and work and raise a family, and I'm happy to have done and be doing all of those things. But we have some challenges, some budget challenges that we can get into, some challenges because the state continues to usurp more of our authority, and that's frustrating, but it's a reality. And so I just, I've loved every minute of the past 4 years, and I hope to have another opportunity to serve 4 more and just work just as hard for the next 4 as I have for the past 4.
Yeah. Well, so you're in a unique position, and this seems kind of unfair to anybody who's just starting to run. It's easy to say, this is what I'm going to do. But you're in a unique position where I get to ask you the question. You've been there. What have you done? And why should someone go ahead and put you in that seat again?
Yeah, well, good question. Well, obviously, a lot of my first term was dominated by COVID. At this point, I think we all have to just accept that COVID is here to stay, and it's something that we have to learn to work with and around. But I think despite COVID, we've been able to do a lot of good stuff, particularly even during the pandemic. I'm really proud of the fact that the city of Folsom, we are the only agency in the county, in terms of the county of Sacramento or the cities within the county, who kept our city hall open the entire pandemic. Our city hall has stayed open Monday through Friday during the entire pandemic, where other cities, they shuttered their city hall. Everybody was working from home. Certainly we had employees who were working from home, but we always kept our city hall open. So if you needed to walk in to pay your utility bill, you could do that. If you needed to go upstairs to the building counter because you were working on opening up a business or remodeling your home or something like that, you could always go into the building counter. So I'm really proud of us for that. During the pandemic in 2020, I was serving as the mayor when all of this kind of, transpired. one of the first things that I did was I said to the city manager, is anybody reaching out to the seniors in our community? And I said, if not, then the council is going to take on that role. And so we worked with the Parks and Recreation Department to get a list of all kinds of seniors, people who participate in Meals on Wheels, people who come to our senior center, any kind of list that we could cobble together. And we just started dividing up that list. And so Mike Kozlowski, my colleague, and also Roger Gaylord, who was on the council at the time, we kind of divided the list and we just started calling people. And I remember one call in particular, I said, hi, I left a message and I said, my name is Sarah Aquino. I'm the mayor of Folsom. Just wanted to check in on you. How are you doing? Want to make sure that you have access to groceries and that you have friends or family or neighbors or somebody, checking in on you. And so I talked to people, I talked to family members, and then sometimes I left messages. And one gentleman, after I had left a message, he called me back and he was very appreciative that I called. And then he said, but don't worry about me. I'm in my 80s, but I'm on my second marriage and my wife is 20 years younger.
Oh, all right.
But I know that I personally, and my colleagues also, I delivered groceries to people. I delivered toilet paper to people. One resident contacted her and she needed help changing the battery on her thermostat. So my husband and I went over there and helped her with that. I delivered library books to people because, we weren't having, the library wasn't open. So that was kind of one thing that I spearheaded when I was the mayor. Also, we kind of did the same thing. We started reaching out to businesses. And again, we kind of, took the list of every business that has a business license in this city and just started divvying up the phone calls and tried to primarily reach out to businesses that we knew were hit really hard, like businesses, like yours, salons, barbershops, tattoo parlors, things that were closed for months at a time and whose industries were really hit hard. So just to let them know that, hey, we're here for you. City Hall is open. If there's something that we could do to advocate for your particular industry, let us know because we'll do it. I also convened a weekly conference call at the beginning of the pandemic. So we had representatives on the phone every Friday. We had a call with the city of Folsom, Folsom Cordova School District, Folsom Lake College, both wardens from the prisons, the business community, Mercy Hospital of Folsom, Kaiser, a couple other agencies and organizations. And really the point of that was just because this was so new to everybody, it was just to increase communication and also to share resources. And so out of that call, a couple examples of things, the chief medical officer at the time at Mercy Folsom went over to the prisons to help them prepare for the inevitable outbreak of COVID cases. Because, Folsom State Prison is, it dates back to the 1800s. It's not really set up for quarantining and that sort of thing. And so he helped them figure all, okay, what are you going to do when somebody tests positive? Where are you going to put them and how are you going to isolate them and all that kind of stuff? And then inmates at Folsom Prison were sewing hundreds of cloth masks and they had a couple hundred left over. And so we arranged for those to go to the school district. So again, just try to sharing resources during unprecedented times. So I would say those are some examples of things that we were able to accomplish in the last couple of years. But also, just last year, PG&E came in and said that they were going to clear cut, about 300 trees, including several dozen oak trees. And I think some of my colleagues were willing to say, well, PG&E has that authority. And it's like, what? Wait a second here. Wait a second. And so started, working with Bruce Klein, former city attorney, was very involved in that effort. And just kind of started looking to see, okay, what exactly do they have the authority to do? And then we decided, hey, no, we're going to stand up to them and say, of course, we're concerned about fire danger just as you are, but they want to come in and just clear cut the trees because that means they don't have to come in and maintain anything, right? It's easier for them to just remove everything than come in and maintain it, make sure, trim branches every year or whatever. But we successfully stood up to them. So those are some of the examples.
Good. I appreciate that. Thank you. What's for this next leg of the journey, what's the nut to crack? What's the big thing, the big agendas, the items, the issues?
So we do have a structural deficit predicted in the next couple of years. It really, I think, comes down to two things. Property tax and sales tax revenue. Those are the biggest generators of revenue for our general fund. Our general fund budget is about $102 million this year. And about 60% of that comes from property tax and sales tax. And historically, those have increased at about 5% a year, right? It was just very steady, very predictable. And as long as the city kept our expenditures increasing at about 4 to 4.5% per year, we always had enough money to pay our bills. And we always had a little bit left over that we could add some positions here or there, or do some capital projects or whatever we needed to do. But because of the shift to online shopping, not just because of COVID, but certainly exacerbated because of COVID. But as we know, that shift has been happening for a long time. But because of that shift to online shopping, sales tax now only increases at about 2.5% per year. And so that's creating a bit of a problem for us. The other thing is our pension payments account for about 16% of our general fund expenditures. They're going to go down a little bit next year because last year or the year before, PERS had a really good, 20% return on investment. But this past year that just ended June 30th, they had a 6% loss. Well, that has to be made up. And that means cities and counties, our pension bills go up. So that's going to be with us for the long haul also. So those two things together are giving us some budget challenges. And of course, just like with your home budget, the to-do list never goes away, right? There's always things to do, projects and personnel that we need. And so we're going to have some tough conversations there. We either have to figure out how to generate some additional revenue, cut expenses, or do a combination. One of the things that I proposed earlier this year in February, and my colleagues thankfully agreed, was an ad hoc committee to basically identify and inventory city-owned properties that are either not being utilized or they're being underutilized. So, for example, little remnants of land that are left over from developments, whatever. Some of those we don't need, and we could just sell off. Maybe a neighbor is interested in acquiring a little bit of extra property or something. But then we also have properties. The rodeo arena would be an example. The amphitheater in the historic district, the Y property on Folsom Boulevard, which is kind of where some of the train stuff you see. But those are what we would consider to be kind of underutilized properties. Like, for example, the rodeo arena, that's only used a couple weeks out of the year. And so this committee got together to figure out, okay, which properties should we recommend to the council be sold, which should be developed, leased, and what should be activated to try to generate some revenue for the city. So, for example, there is across from Karen's Bakery, that lot on the corner is privately owned. But between that lot and Lake Natoma Crossing, the city owns a little lot in there. And so those two properties together, the one that the city owns and the one that's privately owned, that is premium space in the historic district. It absolutely should be developed. And that would result in additional property tax for the city, possibly additional sales tax, depending on what kind of mixed use thing goes in there. Mm-hmm. But so just kind of, identifying some of that. So, everybody talks about a sales tax increase like Rancho Cordova or City of Sacramento, City of Roseville having. Yes, that's going to have to be on the table as something that we discuss as an option. But we also have to just be creative and look for other ways to, kind of maximize what we already have.
Yeah. Are you a fan of an increased sales tax? I know that we've tried and failed at that before.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody's a fan of paying more taxes. Am I open to having a discussion? Yes. It's just a fact. Again, there's more on the city's to-do list than there are funds available. We are competing for businesses and jobs and all that kind of stuff with other cities who do have more resources than we do because they have those additional sales tax measures. So it definitely needs to be on the table, but if we're going to do it, we have to do it right. And that's why it came up for a vote recently. One of my colleagues voted in July to put it on the November 2022 ballot. And that's just not enough time. It's not enough time to involve the community in discussions and to try to build support, because if we put it on the ballot and it fails, we're done. We can't put it on for decades. It already failed miserably in 2018. So if we're going to do it, we have to show why there's a need. We have to, I think, present a vision to the community. It can't just be about, hey, we need extra money, and so we need a sales tax measure. I think it has to be about a vision and letting folks know this is a decision that we're making to invest in our city, right? Because yes, although we need staffing desperately in departments, we also have to say, hey, this is a chance to finish our parks master plan, maybe do some other amenities that we don't have right now that would really continue to make Folsom an attractive place for decades to come. So I think part of it is just really laying out that vision.
Okay. So we need money, but we also have the surplus, and the surplus is more than, I don't know if necessary is the right word, but
So I think you're
than-
referring to our rainy day fund, which is basically our savings account, right?
exactly.
And the
So,
council has a policy of having a rainy day fund equal to at least 15% of our general fund expenditures. That actually, as a requirement, is pretty low compared to what other cities have.
okay.
So our policy is 15%. The practice has been to keep it between 20 to 25%, the reserve. Right now, we sit at about 22.5%. So it's a healthy reserve.
Mhm.
But I would also argue that it's because this council and past councils have been very prudent in putting aside that money that we were able to weather the recession, that we were able to keep everything going during COVID. I mean, during the 2008, 2009 era, that rainy day fund got down to like $3 million.
Mm.
I mean, it got really, really low. And then slowly it's been built back up. And then COVID, we took about a $20 million hit because of COVID, because of a loss in sales tax revenue, a loss in park programming revenue, right? There were no classes, there were no leagues or anything that anybody was participating in. There were no rental fees coming in, right? Nobody's having an event at the community center back then.
Right.
So, and then there were additional expenses. So it was about a $20 million hit. So having that healthy reserve allowed us to weather those things with no noticeable change in services to residents. But at the same time, there comes a point where it's too much, right? If we start putting in 30, 35%, where we, if our rainy day fund equals that amount of our general fund expenditures, then that's too much, right? We're not building a balance sheet, we're building a community, and those are taxpayer dollars, and they ought to be invested in the community. So certainly there's a line, right? But I think where we are now at about 22.5% is reasonable.
Okay. So at some point it becomes not preventative or reparative. It becomes bigger than that, and then you decide what you need to do with that excess money.
And don't forget, Don, I mean, I think everybody right now talks about inflation and a recession is coming and stuff, right? And so I don't think this is the time to back away from that.
Yeah, there are some that are running for these seats that might say, recession, whatever. Do you think there is one coming?
I'm, there are people smarter than I am out there in the world of economics. And so, I generally defer to them, but, I think we want to be prudent for sure.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying, that there is a limit on your knowledge. You're a very smart woman, but I appreciate that in anybody that's running for office saying, hey, this is what I know. This is what I'm good at. This, I need help with this, so that feels good. Talk to me a bit about the growth of the city. This is a topic that I see come up in so many different, having a business in the historic district, I'm working with a bunch of different people in the city, in the county, in the district, in the chamber, and there's so many thoughts about this. Some are diehard. Folsom needs to stay a small, tight-knit kind of a community, and then some are super excited about things like expansion.
Right.
Where do you fall?
So this is kind of funny. So in 2020, when I was the mayor and I was giving the State of the City address, I kind of recounted how prior to us incorporating in 1946, the Chamber of Commerce is the one who led that effort, right, to incorporate the city. And they had a community meeting where the public was invited, and the guest speakers for that meeting were the mayor and the clerk of the city of Ileton. Because at the time, the populations were very similar, and Ileton had recently incorporated. Today, Ileton, I think, has about 1,000 people. And the city of Folsom obviously has about 80,000 people. And I think it's just kind of interesting because, I don't know that anybody, no disrespect to Ileton, but I wouldn't say it's this thriving city. And I think the city of Folsom is, a pretty vibrant, thriving city. I think there's a balance there for sure. Obviously, south of 50, what we call the Folsom Plan area right now, that ship has sailed. Anybody who thinks that we can stop that or whatever, that's happened, that's going. Obviously, we have people living down there now, and we want that part of Folsom to look and feel like it's always been part of Folsom, right? And eventually there will be some great amenities down there where people who live north of Highway 50 will want to travel south of Highway 50. As far as additional growth, there is, and there always will be pressure for the city to continue to grow. South of White Rock Road, probably pressure to grow west, to incorporate some of the area of unincorporated Sacramento County. And my position on this is pretty simple. There are two questions that absolutely have to be answered before the city should ever, in my opinion, expand our boundaries. Number one is, where's the water going to come from? Because that is a very valid question. And the second is, have past annexations been good for the city? Are they paying for themselves? And what I mean by that, I don't know the exact number, but I've heard that I think over the years, the city of Folsom has expanded its boundaries about 8 or 9 times. And so, obviously every time that you grow out, right, you're taking on more responsibility. That's farther that you have to provide services. And so, there are consultants out there who will study that, right? So let's just say a past annexation. I'm just going to throw out Lexington Hills for an example. We ought to be able to know, is that paying for itself, right? Are the property taxes and the sales taxes generated from that annexation or previous annexations, are those enough to cover the cost to provide those services, especially now that we have some aging infrastructure? I don't know the answer to it, but I think that's a question that should be asked and answered before we decide to take on any more responsibility. And if we're talking about a structural budget deficit and a possible sales tax increase, well, I think you could argue that we can't even afford the city that we have, so why would we take on any more responsibility? But even if a city isn't growing outwardly, I think cities always do have to grow and change and reinvent themselves, right? Because things change. Retail, brick and mortar stores are not the thing that they once were, right? I mean, you can see that in the city of Citrus Heights. Sunrise Mall, where I grew up going as a kid, and my first job in high school was at Sunrise Mall. That's now going to be reinvented. There's going to be housing there, office space. They're completely redoing that. So I think when you say growth, it should a city always be growing? In my opinion, yes, but it doesn't always mean that it's growing out, but that it's evolving, it's changing, it's reinventing itself, right? I mean, we have some let's just say big box stores maybe who, maybe 10 years from now, they won't be here. So what are we going to do with that space? How are we going to change it? And then part of that is, as I talked about before, some of these mandates from the state of California, right? Probably the one question that I get from everybody is, why is Folsom building so many apartments? And of course, the city, we don't build, own, or operate any apartment complexes, but what the state requires us to do is to zone land for housing for every income level. Mm-hmm. And so the state has said that in order for you to zone land and have it be considered affordable for low income or very low income residents, you have to put at least 30 units to the acre. Well, guess what? 30 units to the acre, that means apartments. And so we don't have any choice when it comes to that. The state mandates that we do it. Long time ago, before my time, the city of Folsom was sued for not having enough affordable housing. And so, so that's one of the things that we have to do. But, the Central Business District is an area of interest for me. And that's the area roughly between Blue Ravine and Sutter Middle School and Riley and East Bidwell, that everything in there. And so we have some housing in there right now, and there's more to come. I'd love to see that area rebranded, not the Central Business District. Maybe we just call it the Central District. And it becomes kind of this, a little bit more of an urban feel, right? Something more eclectic and just kind of has a neat vibe to it, where people are walking and just kind of more of a midtown feel, but in the city of Folsom,
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Talk to us a little bit about the state usurping authority. Besides it, and clarify for me if you think affordable housing is part of the state usurping authority.
Okay. Yeah. So, first of all, I'm certainly, I think we do need to have housing for all income levels, and I'm not opposed to that. But in terms of where we place it, the height, the setback, the design, whether we require parking, all that kind of stuff, that's the thing that the state is taking more and more control away from local government, right? I mean, I think we know better than a legislator from Southern California about what is the best place in our city, to put an apartment complex or to put high density housing, right? Yeah, loss of control in terms of housing, like I said, the design, some of the standards, where we can place it, what kind of, if we can mandate that they have parking or, whatever. Another example would just be mandates that come from the state that aren't funded. So the perfect example right now, all the residents, we've all had to switch to this, where you can no longer put food into your garbage can, right? Your food has to go into your green waste can. So I've been composting at my house for a long time. I try to put my fruit and vegetable scraps in my compost bin, but meat or dairy products or something, typically I would put those in the trash or down the garbage disposal. Well, now you can still do the garbage disposal, but you can't put it in your trash can. So you have to put it in your green waste can, right? Well, that is an example of a mandate that came from the state, Senate Bill 1383 that was passed, but it came with absolutely no funding. So cities and counties are responsible for implementing this, which of course requires, now we have to pick up your green waste every week. So that requires more trucks, more drivers. It requires an education campaign outreach to the residents, because that's been confusing to people, the whole process. We're also supposed to be enforcing it, right? The state wants us to enforce it, to make sure that people are not putting food waste into their garbage can. But all of that comes with no funding, which means, of course, we had to raise the rates. There's no, we can't absorb that in the general fund. So we had to raise the rates for our solid waste service.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a business owner, right, you have to do that. So that it's just another frustration. Yeah. About kind of the state dictating you're going to do this, but either not providing any funding or just taking away our ability to make decisions that are best, for our own communities.
Yeah. I know for commercial waste, we were early adopters.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on the video for the how-to for the city. But truth be told, we were using the system while there were numerous questions to be answered. And I would call the city, and the city's always great to work with on this stuff. But like, where do I get these bags?
Yeah.
I don't know. When you find them, let us know so we can, put it on the resource list.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a cart before the horse, and you're saying that's because of the state mandate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand either, they love us to just tell off the state. Well, there are many times that we would like to do that, but there are severe financial penalties for non-compliance. So I think for that SB 1383, if we don't comply, it's like a $10,000 penalty per day.
That's not chump change.
No.
My goodness. Talk to me. The city, we'll switch gears completely. Generally, I think that most people say this is a safe community. They feel safe here, good place to raise their kids. It's been that way for a while, still ranked very high. But I hear a lot of talk of needing to increase our police force because of rising crime, things that are happening in surrounding cities. It's all good conversation. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the current state of our police force, what we need to do, how we need to move forward.
So we have budgeted 80 sworn officers. That's from the chief on down. And do I think we need more police officers? Yes, I do. The question is, how do you pay for them? I think at one point we were like at 92 or something. That was prior to the recession, a long time before I came on the council. And certainly we're not there now, and the city's growing. And so we definitely are understaffed. We need more police officers. With that being said, we have a great department. They do a great job. We've got our crime suppression unit that spends probably 80% of their time talking with homeless individuals and trying to connect them with services. And I think our city looks great, and they do a great job of trying to help that population and keeping the city clean for all residents. But we do, and I think part of it, I don't know how if you do this, but I regularly read the police logs, which are public record. They're posted on our city's website, and it's a lot of petty theft. It's a lot of property crime. So part of that, again, is frustration with the state, with the legislature, but also with voters who pass some of these propositions that say, you could steal something from a store with $949 or below every single day, day after day, and that's only a misdemeanor. I mean, that's just ridiculous. The pendulum has swung way too far, and it needs to swing back toward the middle, and I hope it will soon. Part of that is frustration that we're having to deal with that kind of stuff. People coming in, to our city because, right, if you're a thief, you're going to go where they have nice things, and that's that's unfortunate. But so yes, absolutely, I think we need more officers. This is a little bit of a double-edged sword because I think we need more officers, but that's not really something I want to advertise, right? Just in case some criminals are watching Facebook or something and seeing. But we have to be able to pay for them, and it can't be with one-time money from our rainy day fund. It has to be with ongoing revenue, because we wouldn't want to hire somebody for a year or two and then have to let them go. So as of, we've had 79 for quite a few years. This year we were able to add, this budget year that's just started July 1st, we were able to add one officer, an animal control officer, and a dispatcher. And then we're following the staffing plan for south of 50. So that's phase one that we've finished. Phase two roughly would come in at about 2025, and that calls for, I think, another 4 officers. And then about 5 years after that, it's about 14 more officers. It's a big jump. But to the extent that we can accelerate those hirings, we of course will. For some reason, the sales tax gets closer up to that 5% as it had been historically. Of course, that's the number one place. We gotta start putting some officers in there. We have, as a city, applied for some grants. There's one that we're waiting for to hear about right now, but we are not the type of city, I guess, that typically qualifies for those grants.
Okay, Sarah, I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but time is running out here. So I've got 2 quick questions. You ready? The first one is, I write you a blank check for the city. I have no money, but I write you a blank check. Where's the first place you spend it?
I would I would start a trust fund for our pensions, just like we have a trust fund for our retiree healthcare. So that in years when PERS says, hey, we're going to charge you a whole bunch of extra because we didn't do very well on our investments last year, our general fund won't take a hit. We'll have this trust fund that can kind of act as a buffer.
Okay, good, thank you. This next question is totally frivolous in nature. It's fun. And I'm asking everybody. It's a
Okay.
section I call Politicians Answer Medical Questions. So here is here's your question. My doctor says I need to lose about 15 pounds. Do you agree with my doctor? Why or why not?
John, what the heck? I don't typically get my medical advice off Facebook
Okay.
or Zoom. I think you look fantastic, John. But again, I would trust your doctor, when it comes to medical advice over me. I was in college long enough, John, that you should be calling me doctor. But alas, I only have a bachelor's degree.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate your time. Everybody does, Sarah. Thank you for everything you have done on the council. And I appreciate you taking the time today to do this so we can all be informed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sean. My pleasure.
You have a good day.
You too. Bye.